So we continue with the chapter respiration, respiratory system, and we are on the parts of respiration. In human, as in most of the animals also, there are four major parts of respiration. First, breathing. This is the physical process in which the atmospheric air is taken in and forced out of the oxygen absorbing organs, the lungs. So yeah, this is one of the conditions wherein breathing is going to be involved. So the first part or the first process which is going to take place during respiration is breathing, wherein you are intaking oxygen and you are giving out. So that and that is will be done with the help of the lungs. Gaseous transport, the oxygen absorbed by the blood in the lungs is carried by the RBC as oxyhemoglobin throughout the body by means of arteries. The carbon dioxide of the tissues is transported to the lungs by the blood by means of veins in two ways, as bicarbonates dissolved in plasma and partly in combination with the hemoglobin of RBCs as carb-aminohemoglobin. So second step in case of respiration is the gaseous transport. So gaseous transport we know that first of all the oxygen rich air is going to be intaken by us, which is going to be taken by the lungs. The lungs will give it to the blood. So the blood is going to be taking away the oxygen from the lungs, wherein it is going to take it by with the help of the hemoglobin present in the RBC. The hemoglobin present in the RBC is the oxygen carrier, and this hemoglobin is going to form a compound which is unstable compound called oxyhemoglobin when it is taken in oxygen, and then it travels to the different parts of the body where it gives away the oxygen and takes carbon dioxide from them, forming into carb-aminohemoglobin, and when it reaches back to the lungs it gives away the carbon dioxide to the lungs, which can be exhaled out. At the same time, the carbon dioxide can also be given out through the plasma in the form of bicarbonates, and which is going to be discarded from the body, from the lungs itself. But so the plasma is going to bring the bicarbonates from the different parts of the body. The third part is the tissue respiration. That is, the terminal blood vessels, that is the capillaries, deliver the oxygen to the body cells or tissues where oxygen diffuses through the thin walls, and in the similar way the capillaries pick up the carbon dioxide released by them. So then what happens is the tissue respiration, wherein the gaseous exchange takes place at the tissue level, wherein the hemoglobin has got the oxygen over there. So the oxygen has been taken in by the tissue, and the tissue gives the carbon dioxide to the hemoglobin. So that particular exchange is the tissue respiration. And finally is the cellular respiration, which takes place inside the cell. The complex chemical changes which occur inside the cell to release energy from glucose is the cellular respiration. So common misconception that many people wrongly say we inhale oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. Instead, we should say we inhale air containing much oxygen and very little carbon dioxide, and exhale air containing less oxygen and more of carbon dioxide than before. Okay, so we are not taking in oxygen and giving it carbon dioxide. We are taking in air which has got more percentage of oxygen and less percentage of carbon dioxide. Whereas when we exhale out, the certain part of the oxygen which was intaken is being absorbed, and still the air which is going to give out will have a good amount of oxygen in it, but the percentage of carbon dioxide which was present earlier will now be increased. That's why we will be exhaling out the air which will be rich in carbon dioxide. Now, where does the respiration occur in a cell? The cellular respiration occurs in two main phases at two different places inside the cell. First is glycolysis. So we knew in the plant chapter that the glycolysis and the Krebs cycle are the two processes which takes place for the breakdown of the glucose. So this is exactly what is happening in both these cases. So first one is glycolysis. Glycolysis occurs in cytoplasm outside the mitochondria. So it is going to happen in the outside of the mitochondria, that is inside the cytoplasm. Breakdown into pyruvic acid, which further breakdowns into ethanol in plants and lactic acid in animals. So we can say that to a certain extent, the cytoplasm is the one which is going to give rise to anaerobic respiration. So whatever respiration is going to be done in the cytoplasm will be anaerobic respiration, because here it is just breaking down the pyruvic acid into ethanol in plants, which is nothing but the outcome of the anaerobic respiration in plants, and lactic acid in case of animals, which is again the outcome of the anaerobic respiration in animals. So that's why we consider that the cytoplasm will be the one which is going to go through the anaerobic respiration in the glycolysis. Anaerobic, not requiring oxygen, very little energy release. So in this case, the glycolysis ke andar, what is going to happen is it is just going to convert the glucose into pyruvate, which is going to just give a very small amount of energy, and it does not require any oxygen at all. So it is an anaerobic respiration. So the glycolysis is an anaerobic part of the respiration. But then what happens is Krebs cycle. The Krebs cycle occurs inside the mitochondria, step-by-step breakdown of pyruvic acid and lactic acid to produce ATP and carbon dioxide. So it is in the mitochondria that the ethanol or the lactic acid which was produced by the cytoplasm is getting converted into carbon dioxide and water and giving out a good amount of ATP, that is in the form of energy. So that is an aerobic respiration because it needs oxygen for breaking down of the pyruvic acid. Much energy produced, H plus ions released in the cycle are removed through the oxygen supplied by forming H2O. So now you know why our body needs oxygen. Yes, to remove the H plus ions. Okay, so see H plus ions कौन सा वैध है? It is basically about C6H12O6. You can now see that C6H12O6 में plus O2 is going to give you 6, okay, forget that, we're going to give you CO2 plus H2. Now over here, if this H plus, the CO2 is directly going to be formed, but this H is going to be released, तो ये H को H2 में convert करने के लिए oxygen is required. Okay, so that's what they are seeing here, that H1 ion released in the cycle are removed through the oxygen supplied by forming H2O. So we know why we need oxygen. We need oxygen so as to remove the H plus ions. Now respiratory organs, that is breathing. The respiratory system in humans consists of air passage, that is the nose, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchioles and the lungs. So the complete is the respiratory system. Starting from here, the nostrils से चालू होगा. So that will be the nose, then the pharynx यहाँ पे अंदर, उसके बाद larynx, और larynx के बाद में the trachea to the lungs, bronchi and the lungs. The nose, the external part of the nose bears two nostrils separated by a cartilaginous septum. So these are the two nostrils separated by a septum in between. The hair present in the nostrils prevent large particles from entering the system. The two nostrils open into a pair of nasal chamber. The inner lining of the nasal chamber performs three functions. It warms the air as it passes over. It adds moisture to the air. Its mucus secretion entraps harmful particles. So inside this, over here inside there is a nasal chamber. The nasal chamber has got the three functions. So first thing is that it is the air what we breathe in is going to be made warm inside. See, our body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius. The air outside may be at 10 degrees Celsius if you are at very cold place, or it could be even at 24 degrees Celsius like a normal room temperature, or it could be even lesser than that. So we don't want that suddenly a very cold thing should enter into our organ system and create any problem. So that's why the air which is going to go there is going to be almost getting converted into the body temperature. So they will be equal to the body temperature. So that's why the warming up of the air is required, and then it passes further. So first thing is the warming. Second thing, it adds moisture to the air. Why moisture is required? So that the dust particles and all get trapped it along the mucous membrane, and also with the help of the moisture inside over there, you are lubricating the air which is going to pass through. Okay, so you are acting as a lubricant also. So add moisture to the air, and it mucus secretion. Yes, mucus secretion is going to entrap the dust particles and the harmful particles. So always breathe through the nose and not through the mouth, because otherwise these three functions is not going to take place. So if we are breathing through our mouth, then of course there is no moisture in the air, there is no warmth in the air, and neither the most important part, that the germs may enter into your body while you respire through the mouth. An additional function of the nose is smell. Yes, you can smell things with the help of the nose. The sensory cells of smell are located in a special pocket situated high up in the nasal chamber. When you smell something special, you give a little sniff which carries the odor up into the pockets. So there are some sensory pockets inside over here, which is when I can smell something. So you're taking a deeper breath. So when you take a deeper breath, you are trying to take that particular air into that particular pockets, which can really identify the smell properly. Does the nose help in speaking? Close the mouth. Yeah, it of course helps you in speaking also, because if you close your nose and then you speak something, definitely the pronunciation what you can give will not be proper. So that's why it is, if you close your nose with the fingers and try to speak Nanaji, go to Nandgaram and not Nagpur, to usme pura gadbad hone wala. So you don't speak, so you can say that nose, yes, nose is helping in speech also. Then the next part is the pharynx. The nasal chamber open at the back into the wide cavity, the pharynx, situated at the back of the mouth. It is common passage of air and food. So the pharynx is the common passage for the air and the food. Both are going to be there. It leads into an air tube, the trachea, windpipe, and the food pipe, esophagus, located dorsally behind the trachea. So dorsally behind the trachea, there are the two things, that is the esophagus and the food pipe or esophagus, and the trachea, which is the windpipe. When not in use, the food pipe is partially collapsed as it has soft walls. The entrance of the trachea is guarded by a flap called epiglottis, which closes it at the time of swallowing food. Incomplete closure of epiglottis during swallowing causes cough. So you can see that normally the food pipe, esophagus, will always be closed form of thing, because respiration is going to be continuous there. But whenever you are trying to swallow something, when you are going to eat something and swallow something, at that time you will find that there will be a flap, the epiglottis, which is going to cover the food windpipe, so that the food has no other path but to enter into the esophagus. In case the food by chance enters into the windpipe, then it is going to give you a coughing, and immediately that particular thing is going to be thrown out. The next is larynx. The larynx, or the voice box, popularly called as Adam's apple, which is located over here. You can feel, when I am speaking, I can feel that particular vibrations of the larynx. It is a hollow cartilaginous structure located at the start of the windpipe. You can feel it with your fingers in the front part of your neck. When you swallow something, this part rises and falls. So when you swallow something, it just goes up and down over here. That is nothing but the pharynx. The pharynx contains two ligamentaceous folds called vocal cord. Air expelled forcibly through the vocal cord vibrates them, producing sound. By adjusting the distance between the two cords and the tension by means of attached muscles, a range of sounds can be produced. So what we are producing while I am speaking, at that time we are doing the same thing, that we are controlling the two cords, the vocal cords are being adjusted and the vibrations are adjusted, so that whatever I am speaking is coming out in the form of proper words. Voice and speech. Voice is a sound produced by a vocal cord of the larynx. Speech is a character given to the voice by the complex movements of the lips, cheeks, tongue, and jaws. Speech consists of words and syllabi, and it is speciality of only the human being. So the sound what we can produce is basically, the voice is just a sound which we can produce. Like even the snoring is a kind of a voice, it's a sound. It is not a speech, where speech is particularly when you are saying something in form of proper words, maybe in any language. But yeah, it will be the characters when we are going to say something with the help of the tongue, movement of the tongue, the lips, the teeth, yeah, even the nose to a certain extent. The next is the trachea. So the next part is the trachea, which is going down. The trachea of the windpipe emerges from the larynx down below the neck, where it is partly covered by the thyroid gland. Its walls are strengthened by C-shaped rings or cartilages. So the trachea is over here. That is the thyroid gland over here in the form of a bow. So यहाँ पे thyroid gland है. और यहाँ से नीचे जो जाता ट्रकिया, they are made up of C-shaped के ऐसे रहते हैं, so that they are made strengthened. So to strengthen them, they are made of C-shaped rings or cartilages. The incomplete part of the ring begin on the back, being on the back side. So the rings are like this. So it is like this. ये ऐसे है. यहाँ पे covered, but incomplete is on the back side. So this part, empty part, is on the back side. The ring provides flexibility and keeps the trachea distended permanently. So it does not collapse. Okay, the rings के कारण the windpipe will never collapse. It will never form any kind of a crumpled thing. So that's the reason that they are forming the rings, so that they will always be distended. The next is the bronchi. So the bronchi are the one which are now moving towards the inside of the lungs. So it can be said that if we see a particular, so we have the nasal cavity over here, and then the pharynx and the larynx, and then it goes down, and then, so this is the trachea, okay, and these are the paths into the, going into the lungs. So these are the bronchi. So this is the trachea, and these are the bronchi. And then over here are, over here are the two lungs. The lungs are over here, and the lungs ke under there will be the branches of the bronchi. So it is, so these are the lungs, and these branches are called as bronchioles, which are further divided inside by wherein there will be very small air sacs, which is called as alveoli. Okay, alveolus, alveolus, yeah. See, if we are talking about the lungs, okay, I'll come to the lungs later when we start. Okay, we are on the lungs. When we talk about the lungs, we can, I would say the most common thing which is resembling the lungs would be a cauliflower. See, if you see the cauliflower, it will be like having a big stem. So our one lung is like a cauliflower. So there's a big stem at the bottom, and then there are branches. Branches ke under branches, and then there will be a lump of the flowery part. And the flowery part, if you rub it, it will form into very, very tiny dot-like structures. Okay, so the outer part of the cauliflower, if it is just made dry, normally it is wet, that's why it is all in a form of a lump. But if it is dry, you will find that it will powder up, it will form into small ball-like structures. Similarly, in our lungs also, the trachea ends up into the partitions which are called as the bronchioles, and the bronchi is going to form further or become branched together to form into secondary bronchi and tertiary bronchi, and then there will be bronchioles. So these bronchioles which are there, they are going to have ended up with the things like this, that it will be having a kind of a stem, will be having a kind of the this kind of arrangement over here. So this arrangement, you can see that small ball-like structures which I am making over here. These are nothing but the air sac. The air sac which are called as the alveolus. So this alveolus is the one in which the actual gaseous transfer between the blood and the lungs takes place. So the actual gaseous transport takes place inside this alveolus. So let's see the detail. The bronchi close to the lungs, the trachea divides into two tubules called the bronchi. Singularly is bronchus, which enter the respective lungs. On entering the lungs, each bronchus divide into fine secondary bronchi, which further divides into still finer tertiary bronchi. The cartilaginous rings are those present at the trachea are also present in the smaller bronchi to keep them distended. So the cartilage के अंदर जो C-shaped था, the same thing is going to continue not only in the trachea but also in the bronchi and the further secondary and the tertiary bronchi. Bronchioles are the subsequent still finer tubes of tertiary bronchi. So tertiary bronchi, when they go further into smaller kind of tubules, they will be called as bronchioles, which acquire a diameter of about 1 mm and are without cartilage rings. By repeated branching, the bronchioles ultimately end in a cluster of tiny air chambers called the air sacs or alveoli, singular alveolus. A network of blood capillaries surround the walls of each alveolus. The walls of the alveoli are extremely thin, one cell thick, and moist, thus allowing gaseous diffusion through them. Oxygen from air first dissolves in the thin layer of the watery fluid that covers the surface of the alveolus. The lungs provide an enormous surface area. The number of bronchioles in the two lungs of an adult human about 700 million. The total surface area of the alveoli about 70 square meters, nearly equal to the area of the tennis court or nearly 100 times the surface area of the skin. So that's the basic thing, that the small alveolus over here, they make this particular area such a huge place for the gaseous transport to take place, so gaseous exchange to take place. So the alveolus are hence going to be acting as a huge, or they are basically forming a huge surface area for diffusion of the gases. So protective inner lining of the respiratory passage. The entire inner lining of the larynx, trachea, bronchi and bronchioles are formed of ciliated epithelium. During lifetime, the cilia are constantly in motion, driving any fluid, mucus that is on them, and also any tiny particles that may have come in with the air towards the mouth. So that's what the thing is. The complete of the trachea and the bronchial, they are made up of ciliated epithelium. We know that ciliated epithelium has got hair-like structures inside. So thus, when we continue to breathe in, breathe out, so there is the cilia is keep on slashing. The slashing movement of the cilia is going to entrap the dust particles and the other particles inside, and they are going to drive them out from the body when the air comes in contact with the mouth. The lungs are a pair of spongy and elastic organs formed by the air sacs. Their connecting bronchioles, blood vessels, etc. The two lungs are roughly cone-shaped, tapering at the top and broad at the bottom. The left lung has 2 lobes and the right lung has 3. The left lung is slightly smaller and to accommodate the heart in between. So the left lung is slightly smaller and this is bigger. This has got 3 lobes So lobe means that I've got three parts, 1, 2 and 3 as a three parts है. यहाँ पे सिर्फ दो parts है because this has to accommodate the heart over here. So the heart is over here. That's why the left lung, this is the left part and this is the right part. So the left part does not will have the slightly smaller part. So left one will be that way. Membranous coverings of the lungs. Each lung is covered by two membranes, the inner, that is visceral pleura, and outer parietal pleura. So the lungs has got two membranous coverings. The inner one is called as visceral pleura and the outer is called as parietal pleura. And in between the two is a fluid called as the pleural fluid. The inner pleura and outer pleura with a watery fluid, pleural fluid in the pleural cavity found between the two membranes. This arrangement provides lubrication for free movement of the expanding and contracting lungs. See, we always see when we breathe in and breathe out, the lungs are going to keep on expanding and contracting at the same continuously. So this expansion contraction is going to cause a good amount of friction between the layers over here. So that's why the fluid between the two layers of the lungs will automatically act as a lubricant and will not allow the heating to take place in the lungs. The lungs occupy the greater part of the thoracic cavity. They are located close to the inner surface of the thoracic wall and their lower bases closely rest on the diaphragm. So they are in the thoracic cavity and the lower base of the lungs, that is this part over here, is resting on the diaphragm. So this is the diaphragm on which the it is resting, okay, when the lungs are resting on it. Blood supply to the lungs. The right auricle pumps all the deoxygen. Now, one thing over here we can see even about the alveoli, which we did not see earlier, is that here the alveolus is over here like this. Okay, alveoli is like this, and the blood vessel which is there. So this is an alveoli. Okay, which is having a very thin wall, which is having some amount of fluid in it, so it's always moist. So this thin wall, it's a single cell epithelium over here in the alveolus, and outside this is the blood vessel. So the blood vessel is over here, just outside this particular part. So this blood vessel is the one. So the capillary, or you can say the blood capillary, is over here. So the blood capillary is going to help. So the RBCs are over here. These are the RBCs over here. So these RBCs are going to be coming in contact. So the air which is coming inside will be rich in oxygen, and the one which is going outside will be rich in carbon dioxide. So here this gives us carbon dioxide and the oxygen goes inside over here. So this is the gaseous exchange which is going to take place in this particular alveolus, which is very well given in the figure 14.4 of this particular textbook. So that is about. Now when you talk about the blood coming into the lungs, we know very well in the circulatory system in the 8th standard itself, then the heart is going to give the blood from the pulmonary artery to the lungs for purification or oxygenation. So deoxygenated blood from the heart is going to be pumped into the lungs through the pulmonary artery. So the right auricle pumps all the deoxygenated blood received in it from the body into the right ventricle, which in turn pumps it to the lungs through the main pulmonary artery. The pulmonary artery soon after it emerges divides into two branches entering their respective lungs. So the pulmonary artery से जो भी आएगा, so the pulmonary artery, yeah, can you erase that? The pulmonary artery, so first we know that the right auricle is going to get the blood from the body. The right auricle will pump it to the right ventricle. Right ventricle then pumps it to the pulmonary artery and into the lungs. So first of all, the pulmonary artery will divide into two parts to give it to the two respective lungs, right, and the left part of the lungs. Inside the lungs, they divide and redivide several times to ultimately form capillaries around the air sacs. So they are going to form into capillaries around the air sacs. Veins arising from these capillaries join and rejoin to form two main pulmonary veins from which each lung which pour the oxygenated blood into the left auricle of the heart. So from here, once this particular deoxygenated blood is entering here, it is going to come out of the spring as an oxygenated blood because it has given out all its carbon dioxide and is already taken in the oxygen. So when it is going to come out over here, it is then the capillaries are going to reunite and form into veins, and it is going to form the pulmonary vein which will enter into the left auricle of the heart. The figure 14.6 represents a branching of the respiratory passages and the blood circulation in the lungs. The bright part, red part represents the oxygenated blood, and the dull brownish part represents the deoxygenated blood. The interconnecting capillaries between arteries and the veins have not been shown in the upper figure to avoid complexity in the diagram. So that's what they are given you in the diagram over here. This is the diagram over here in which they are given how the heart se jo that is deoxygenated blood is getting separated out into the different parts of the lungs. The lower figure shows a smaller, highly magnified part of the lungs depleting the air sac alveoli, the capillaries surrounding them, and the connected pulmonary artery and pulmonary vein. So that was about how the gaseous exchange takes place inside the lungs is explained over here. We now see the breathing cycle, that is respiratory cycle, but I think we'll take it in the next video.